Although I live in London now, I was born and grew up in Yorkshire. I'm number 4 of 6 children. My dad was a coal miner for 34 years, and my mum spent most of those earlier years bringing up obviously the 6 children, and eventually went to work in a small local biscuit factory. I didn't do too well at school, even though I was pretty above average. The problem was I was very lazy, very ambitious but very lazy, and eventually though when I did leave school, I had a friend who helped me get a job in a local factory, although fortunately not actually working on the factory floor but working in the cost accounting department, and the company sponsored me going to college 1 day a week to do my part-time studies. Anyway, I didn't do too badly on those, but unfortunately after about 4 years I'd only achieved the first 2 parts in the 5-part accountancy qualification course. Part 3 really got me stuck, and I took it, failed it, took it again, failed it, and took it again and failed it, and almost gave up. But it was at a friend's wedding, well, a friend's mother's wedding, where I met my first guru, a chap called Tony Buzan. He's well known in the educational field because he's the guy who invented or discovered or came up with the idea of mind mapping. You may have seen David Walker and other gurus using mind mapping in their presentation videos. I had a chat with Tony, and I must say his intellect was way above mine. He's one of the founder members of Mensa, but very, very clever guy, and as he was driving a Mercedes sports car SL, I was most impressed and wanted to find out what it was that had helped him be so successful. I chatted with him and discovered that he'd just written a book about study technique. It was all about speed of reading, memory, and how to take notes and how to retain information. And I thought, this is definitely just what I need. Having failed my exams 3 times, I knew I needed to do something different. I knew I needed new techniques, a new strategy. So after the wedding, I went to the local bookshop and bought Tony's book. And a little while afterwards, the BBC, the TV company in the UK, was broadcasting a program by him. In fact, it was a series of 10 programs when he took you through the whole course, the whole book that he had written. So, being very, very motivated to try to become a qualified accountant after all these failures, I watched week after week every one of these programs that he put together. After the program had ended, I decided to give some serious thought to where I wanted to go with my career. And after conversations with my father and other friends, I decided to go away to college full-time to get away from all the distractions and to see if I could put into action what I'd learned from Tony Buzan. Surprise, surprise, following his plan, following his techniques, putting everything into practice that I'd learned, combined with a lot of hard work, I discovered that inside 12 months I'd achieved my goal. I had passed not only part 3, which I'd already failed 3 times, but I also passed part 4 and part 5. And not only that, I was very, very fortunate in that I was able to get a position with a company in London who had come to the college to recruit trainee accountants. I was with them for 5 years before I was able to get a very, very prestigious position soon afterwards with a company which you may have heard of called PricewaterhouseCoopers. I went to work with them as a management consultant. You may know of them because they're the largest accountancy firm in the world. And all of this success had come about through meeting my first guru, Tony Buzan. Some years later, though, I decided to have a career change and went into selling financial services. Initially, I wasn't too successful at that. Maybe I was a little bit too technical in my presentation. Being an accountant, I loved talking about figures, but as I discovered, not everyone in the world is as taken by the facts and figures of the various financial products. But while I was pursuing my career in sales, as it were, I came across a guy at a sales conference called Alan Pease. Alan is an international speaker, expert on body language. Previously, he too had been a salesman, so he knew an awful lot, and he was presenting a different way of selling. And this method seemed something which I thought was wonderful, because it seemed to fit in with my personality. So I took on board what he had been teaching at that conference, and obviously I was very keen to acquire some of his audio recordings as well, and put into practice in my sales career what I learned from him. And very, very quickly my sales took off. I had discovered a way of selling that seemed to fit very well with my, as I said, with my personality, and I loved it, and it worked for me, which was really great. Anyway, after a little while, garnered by my new skills and confidence, I spoke to a colleague of mine, Michelle. We'd been in the same sales team together for quite a while, and I had this business idea and wanted to see if she would come and join me in the business. And you could say that that was probably the best sales I ever made, by persuading her to join me in the business. And so we decided that together we were going to start a will writing business here in the UK, offering wills and probate to people who obviously were yet to do it. Anyway, that was back in 1990, and since then Michelle and I have grown the business from just the two of us with a very, very small capital. In fact, even if you go on Companies House now, you'll see that we've only got the equivalent of $3 or $4 share capital, and yet we're trading at over $1 million a year. We have 40 staff, and over that, since 1990, we've written wills for over 100,000 people throughout the UK. Now you may think that that should be the end of it. I'm doing very, very nicely, thank you. I'm of mature years, and I'm thinking of retirement, and therefore thinking about something that I'd like to do when I've got time on my hands, when I'm not bound by an office and staff, and something I can perhaps take with me when I go on my travels, as I do enjoy traveling with my partner, and something that we can, or I can do from a laptop.